Dr. McCoy's first Star Trek nickname wasn't Bones, and the original still makes me laugh today. Bones is a great nickname by any standards, but Star Trek's Dr. Leonard McCoy was called a much funnier moniker first. As one side of Star Trek's Kirk-Spock-McCoy triumvirate, DeForest Kelley's chief medical officer was a pivotal figure during the early voyages of the Enterprise. One of McCoy's most memorable character traits was the nickname Bones, predominantly used by Captain Kirk. As well as sounding effortlessly cool, the idea of a ship's doctor going by the name Bones struck a chord, and it remains inextricably woven in the fabric of McCoy's character. Dr. McCoy did not appear in Star Trek, the original series' pilot, The Cage, with medical duties instead performed by John Hoyt's Dr. Boyce. Kelley was one of the many new faces who joined Star Trek's cast after the trip to Talos 4. Calling into action immediately, McCoy enjoys a prominent role in The Man Trap, the episode that would ultimately provide the world with its very first taste of Gene Roddenberry's creation. Curiously, The Man Trap gives McCoy a very different nickname before the character ever gets called Bones. Dr. McCoy is called Plum in Star Trek before he's ever called Bones. The Man Trap finds the Enterprise on a routine trip to perform medical checks on a Federation scientist and his wife, a mission complicated by the fact that said wife and Dr. McCoy once shared a romantic relationship. While attempting to remain professional, Star Trek's The Man Trap puts McCoy in a string of difficult positions, and his affection for the woman in question, Nancy Crater, is obvious from the beginning. Memories of wistful years gone by are first rekindled when Nancy spots McCoy and calls out, "Plum," in an adoring voice. As McCoy is forced to explain to an amused Captain Kirk, Plum was Nancy's pet name for him during their time together. While Kirk enjoys needling his doctor with the cutesy nickname, Plum isn't a tag that sticks for the remainder of Star Trek, the original series. Nevertheless, it's certainly strange that the man universally known as Bones actually gets called by a totally different nickname the first time audiences meet him. It's striking to imagine that viewers in 1966 would have associated Dr. McCoy as Plum before anything else. The Man Trap may not have been designed as the very first episode of Star Trek, nor as an introduction to its main players, but the Plum joke perfectly encapsulates Dr. McCoy's character nonetheless. DeForest Kelley begins the episode with McCoy's typical brash, forthright demeanor in full flow, refusing to entertain Kirk's jibes about Nancy and determined to keep his mind on the job at hand. The reveal of Plum as an old nickname, however, teases an inner softness to McCoy, a more vulnerable, romantic, tender side that can be easily swayed by emotions such as love. The nickname spells out to audiences that McCoy is much more than just a gravel-voiced, stubborn medicine man. Before he was ever the irritable, eyebrow-raising Bones that generations of Star Trek fans came to adore, Dr. Leonard H., McCoy went by a different nickname, one that never made it to the stars, and probably for good reason. While Bones fits the character like a perfectly replicated medical tricorder, his original nickname, conceived in the earliest drafts of Star Trek, was, wait for it, Sawbones. Yes, Sawbones. Take a moment to picture William Shatner swaggering onto the Enterprise bridge in his golden tunic, turning to his trusted chief medical officer and saying, "What's the prognosis, Sawbones?" Not quite the same emotional resonance, right? More Wild West than Final Frontier. The origins of Sawbones. To be fair, Sawbones isn't just a randomly comical nickname plucked from thin air. The term dates back to the 19th century, a slang expression used to describe field doctors, particularly those in military units whose primary function in the heat of battle was to, quite literally, saw off limbs. It's a gritty, gruesome, and frankly hilarious name to assign to a man responsible for futuristic medicine that could heal a ruptured spleen with a hypospray and some technobabble. Gene Roddenberry, in his original series pitch, imagined Dr. McCoy as a frontier doctor, a little bit country, a little bit cranky, and fully dedicated to saving lives. Sawbones was supposed to emphasize that rough-around-the-edges, homespin personality. But even Roddenberry must have realized fairly quickly, if Star Trek was to be the optimistic, forward-looking utopia of the stars, maybe we didn't need our doctors named after battlefield butchers. So Sawbones got dropped. Enter the cleaner, cooler, and infinitely more charming Bones. Why Bones works so well? Bones isn't just a nickname, it's a tone setter. It's short, punchy, and full of history. In universe, it's short for Sawbones, sure, but it also sounds familiar and friendly, the kind of name a captain might throw around in the middle of a firefight without skipping a beat. It implies camaraderie and trust. I'm a doctor, not a miracle worker. Only hits as hard as it does because you believe that Bones cares deeply, even when he's scolding you. It was DeForest Kelley's perfect deadpan delivery and world-weary charm that elevated Bones from a nickname into a franchise icon. He wasn't just the ship's physician. He was the soul of the crew, always ready with a diagnosis, a dose of realism, and usually an exasperated sigh. But imagining that same performance under the name Sawbones just feels wrong. Like calling Mr. Spock Pointy, or renaming the ship USS Chugboat. The nickname that makes me laugh anyway. Still, every time I stumble across the fact that Sawbones was once in serious contention, I laugh. Not because it's absurd, though it is, but because it gives us a glimpse into how Star Trek might have turned out just a little goofier than it did. Imagine a franchise where Starfleet officers are all burdened with old-timey nicknames, like they're part of a spacefaring Civil War reenactment. Instead of Bones, maybe we'd have had Spock, Needle Ears; Scotty, Boilerplate; Uhura, Chatterbox; Sulu, Fancy Hands. Thankfully, Roddenberry and the writers realized early on that a little bit of restraint went a long way. Still, part of me wishes we got just one episode, just one, where Captain Kirk lets Sawbones slip out in a moment of levity. Maybe a flashback to their academy days, or an alternate timeline where McCoy never shook the moniker. The idea of Dr. McCoy rolling his eyes and grumbling, "Don't call me that, Jim," in the middle of a Klingon skirmish. It makes me grin every time. A legacy of nicknames. Nicknames have always been an essential part of Star Trek's charm. They help remind us that for all the high-minded ideals and science lectures, these are still people, flawed, funny, and human, well, most of them. Whether it's Bones, Scotty, Number 1, or even 7, the shorthand speaks volumes about the relationships that matter most on these starships. It's also why Sawbones, as laughable as it is, still has a weird nostalgic value. It's a relic from Star Trek's wilder, more uncertain beginnings, when no one quite knew whether this little sky fi show was going to crash and burn or boldly go where no television show had gone before. And while Sawbones never made it past the pitch meetings and early scripts, it still lingers in the background, a reminder of how far McCoy's character came from the conceptual drawing board to the screen. A modern take. Interestingly, newer iterations of Star Trek have been toying with these origins more explicitly. In Strange New Worlds, we meet a young Dr. M'Benga, another physician aboard the Enterprise, and the writing plays more with tone and history. The idea of frontier medicine, of doctors doing what they can with what they have in the great unknown, is as strong today as it was in the 60s. It makes you wonder, in an alternate Star Trek timeline, could Sawbones have actually worked? Maybe. If you leaned all the way into it, really made McCoy the wild-eyed, whiskey-sipping frontier surgeon, complete with a belt full of scalpels and a past littered with